The screwdriver trembled slightly in Oberingenieur Klaus Herrmann's hand as he loosened the final screw on the sealed metal casing of the captured American radio set. The laboratory was silent except for the faint hum of fluorescent lights. Around him, 5 of Germany's top communications engineers leaned closer, eyes glinting with anticipation. "This one came from Casarini," murmured one of them, the first major clash between German and American forces in North Africa. For months, German command had puzzled over reports that Allied coordination had become unnervingly precise, artillery striking within seconds, aircraft arriving as if summoned by thought. Now, in front of them lay the proof. Klaus eased the final panel free. Inside was a lattice of polished coils, tight soldering, and glass tubes unlike anything they had built. "This," he whispered, awe breaking through his restraint, "isn't German. It's something else." The team exchanged wary glances. They were veterans of Telefunken, masters of shortwave engineering, and yet this compact, elegant circuitry defied their expectations. Outside, snow fell gently on Berlin's blackout cityscape. Inside, the hum of discovery grew heavy with unease. Dr. Otto Wierer, the senior engineer, adjusted his spectacles and peered inside. "It's too refined for field equipment. The Americans shouldn't have this yet." Herrmann nodded slowly. "And yet, here it is." That night, they worked in silence, sketching, tracing wires, and labeling components. What they found would soon challenge everything they believed about the war. For this radio, marked -300 Seychelles rupees, was not just a device. It was a window into the future of communication. By morning, the lab was littered with notes and open casings. Coffee cups grew cold beside the dissected radio. Every circuit Klaus mapped revealed something new, layers of precision beyond standard Allied equipment. "This design," Wierer muttered, holding up the antenna coil, "eliminates static interference entirely. It's not AM, it's FM." The room fell silent. FM frequency modulation was cutting edge, nearly theoretical for portable units. Yet here it was, real and functional. It could send clear signals through chaos, through artillery smoke and engine noise. The engineers realized what they were holding, a revolution. Allied units could now talk clearly across miles. Orders that once took minutes could be delivered in seconds. "If they standardize this," said Wierer, almost in awe, "they'll fight faster than we can respond." Outside, Berlin's streets were white with snow, the war seeming distant. But inside, the tension mounted. Each note they wrote, each component diagrammed, brought them closer to understanding that their enemies were winning not through manpower, but through communication. Word spread quickly. Within a week, the -300 Seychelles rupees was transferred to the Telefunken research laboratories under the Ministry of Armaments. The order came directly from Albert Speer himself, reverse engineered immediately. Klaus watched soldiers carry the radio out under heavy guard. It was no longer just an American artifact, it was now Germany's top technological priority. That night, Klaus stared out the frost-lined window of the lab. "How did they manage it?" he whispered. Wierer replied quietly. "Perhaps they learned to fight not with steel, but with sound." The Telefunken laboratories buzzed day and night. Klaus and his colleagues were placed under military supervision. Their work classified as Kriegsentscheidend, war decisive. They disassembled, tested, rebuilt, and recalibrated, but every success revealed another mystery. The Americans had mastered not just FM transmission, but miniaturization. The radio's internal shielding and compact design were unlike anything in the Reich's inventory. Even with blueprints, replicating it was nearly impossible. Supplies were scarce. Copper was rationed, high-quality tubes were limited, and Allied bombers regularly disrupted deliveries. Klaus often worked through the night. His fingers burned from soldering, his notes smudged with graphite and fatigue. "We can make it work," insisted Wierer, "but not in their way. We'll build ours stronger, heavier if we must." By late 1943, they unveiled their answer, the Feldfubie, Germany's first attempt at a portable FM radio. It was brilliant on paper. In reality, it was temperamental, fragile, and required precise tuning. Field soldiers despised it. One loose dial and communication collapsed. Still, it marked a turning point. For the first time, Klaus understood that the war was no longer about tanks and aircraft alone. It was about who could speak, who could hear, and who could connect first. Late one night, while testing the prototype, Klaus muttered to himself, "They fight like they think with one mind." Wierer, half asleep at his desk, murmured back, "And we are still trying to hear our own thoughts." As 1944 dawned, Allied radio networks expanded like veins through Europe. Reports from the front painted a chilling picture. American tank battalions maneuvering with uncanny precision, infantry calling in airstrikes in seconds, and paratroopers coordinating under fire as if wired together. Klaus, surrounded by schematics and half-assembled transmitters, could only watch the tide turn. Each intercepted frequency reminded him of the power he had glimpsed that February morning. New directives arrived: sabotage Allied communications, jam their frequencies, disrupt coordination. Ironically, the same engineers who had admired the -300 Seychelles rupees were now ordered to destroy its advantage. Jam an FM wave? Veer scoffed bitterly. It's like trying to catch fog with your hands. But they tried anyway. Vast jamming towers rose across occupied Europe, humming with futile defiance. The Allies adapted faster, switching channels, refining encryption. Germany's once feared radio superiority had become its greatest vulnerability. One evening, Klaus stood on the roof of the lab, listening through his headset to the faint crackle of Allied chatter, crisp, confident, unstoppable. Somewhere out there, soldiers were using the very same radio he had once held, guiding bombers over his city. As air raid sirens began to wail, Veer joined him, his face lit by the red glow of flares. "You see?" he said softly. "This war was never about weapons. It's about who listens best." Klaus didn't answer. The sky above Berlin thundered, and he realized the truth he had been avoiding. The war had become a contest of invisible empires, fought not in trenches but in frequencies. By spring 1945, Berlin was collapsing. Telefunken's research facilities, once a fortress of innovation, were now shadowed ruins. Generators sputtered, supplies vanished, and most engineers had fled or been conscripted. Still, Klaus remained, tending to his equipment like a priest guarding relics. He wrote in his final lab journal, "Circuits endure longer than ideologies." When the Soviets entered the city, Klaus was captured with a handful of surviving technicians. The Red Army commander examined his credentials, then looked at the shattered remains of the Feldfehl beyond the bench. "You built this?" he asked through an interpreter. Klaus hesitated, then nodded. "We tried to understand them." Instead of imprisonment, he was sent east to a Soviet research institute where captured German scientists were ordered to adapt their radio expertise for the new post-war era. It was irony at its purest. The engineer who once dissected an enemy radio now building for another. Across the ocean, American scientists studied the captured German prototypes, fascinated by how their own innovations had inspired imitations. From both sides, progress accelerated: radio into transistor, transistor into network. Klaus often wondered whether the device that began this journey still existed. Perhaps it lay forgotten in some Allied museum, or maybe, he thought, it lived on in every signal traveling invisibly through the air. Years later, the ruins of Telefunken were overgrown with weeds. But Klaus still remembered that cold February morning in 1943, the day he first opened the American radio. He recalled the smell of metal and ozone, the silent awe of discovery, the whisper of Veer saying, "It could change everything," and it had. The SCR-300, the walkie-talkie, had done more than connect soldiers. It had connected history itself. From those circuits came the blueprint for an entirely new age, one where power would not be measured in armies or empires but in information. In quiet reflection, Klaus realized that the true legacy of war was not destruction but invention. The same technology that once coordinated bombardments would soon carry voices across oceans. Radios became transistors, transistors became satellites, and the airwaves once filled with orders and screams became highways of knowledge. He never returned to Germany's laboratories. He had no need to. The work had already spoken for him. Standing by a cracked window of his small apartment years later, Klaus tuned a handheld receiver and heard a distant broadcast, clear, steady, and without static. He smiled faintly. The world had learned to listen. Even in the darkest years, he thought, human ingenuity found a way to connect. And that, more than any army or empire, was what had truly won the war.